Nearly march, we'll get strong. We're in no rush, let's roll along. We'll step right up, the distance thinks just what he thinks. From Capetown to Cairo, we'll be there in a while, and we'll smile every mile to the land of the Nile on a Wally Bayam caravan.
Africa, the Gold Coast, the Ivory Coast, the Dark Continent. We've read and heard about it under many names. But the very word Africa conjures up visions of jungle drums and elephant stampedes, of hidden treasures and pirate slave ships. And now we're standing on her very soil. When Wally Byam first talked about trailering the length of the African continent, all the travel experts and veteran caravanners told him it just couldn't be done. Impossible, they said. It's never been done before, others warned. If a car can make it, an Airstream can make it, Wally Byam said. I'll prove once again that anywhere a car can go, an Airstream can go, with all the comforts of home to boot. That's Wally Byam, originator of caravans and leader of our expedition. If such a trek was impossible, we would soon find out, because here we are in Cape Town, South Africa, unloading our Airstreams from the steamers that brought us here from New York. Wally assembles our group for last-minute briefing. Our hearts are gay and our spirits high, and we're anxious to get going. Here is our plan. We'll head straight for Durban, then up through Rhodesia and across the Congo. On to Ethiopia, then up the Nile and on to Cairo. We'll be parked beside the Great Pyramids of Giza by Christmas, Wally promised. There are 36 Airstream trailers and 102 people in our caravan. The oldest is 85-year-old Dr. Monroe. The youngest is little Susan Frosch, only 6 years old. We have a large number of middle-aged folks and some teenagers, too. Our license plates tell you we're from all over the USA. We represent people from every walk of life, retired and non-retired, doctors, teachers, businessmen. Just people like you and me who decided it was about time to make those travel dreams come true. At last we will see all the things we've heard and read about mysterious Africa since childhood. It is the morning of July 13th, 1959, and we point our gleaming caravan toward the Indian Ocean on the first leg of our 12,000-mile impossible journey. It's about breakfast time, so we head for the famous Highgate Ostrich Farm, figuring ostrich eggs would probably make a pretty good omelet. And there they are, hundreds of them, looking as astonished at us as we are at them. See that baby bird? In a year, he too will stand 7 feet high and weigh over 300 pounds. And don't believe the old story about ostriches burying their heads in the sand either, as this playful little dog is about to find out. We had our breakfast. 1 egg fed 16 of us. Then we hung around to see the fantastic birds march off to their pen in perfect formation. The next day, we started out along the Indian Ocean, hoping to see some sort of African natives. Within Africa, there are hundreds of individual tribes, each with their own language and custom. We didn't have to travel very far to meet the first of the many groups we were to meet. In a small golden valley, we found a large settlement of a South African tribe whose dress consisted of rusted robes and brilliant beads. They turned out in great numbers to meet us. We even got the opportunity to meet and talk with them at close range. Through sign language and a few words of English, we explained who we were and the purpose of our visit. They were very friendly and expressed some interest in our Airstreams. Although communicating was difficult, We felt that we had already made contact with Africa. Later that afternoon, we left the South African settlement and continued up the sunny east coast toward the busy city of Durban. On the outskirts of Durban, we met a group of highly decorated rickshaw drivers who offered us a ride. It looked like fun, so we scrambled into the rickshaws for a rollicking ride. And it's really great if you're not prone to getting seasick. These rickshaws are the actual taxi cabs in the city of Durban, and it's quite a sight to see them weaving in and out of traffic along with the cars and buses. Not too far from where we found the rickshaws, we met still another tribe of South Africans. We asked to see one of the tribal dances, and they were quick to oblige. But we didn't know they were going to dance for 4 straight days. The patterns of beads you see across their chest convey a message to the man of their choice. But this kind of dancing takes sustenance, and occasionally the dancing groups would take a break for a little nourishment. These girls take time out to enjoy a few handfuls of the African staple, mealie mush. But the show goes on, and now the men, dressed in luxurious leopard skins, begin their dances. And this is Durban, a big, beautiful, modern city on Africa's east coast. Whether here in Africa or in the Rockies back home, Airstream caravans are a wonderful way to find new friends and interests, to discover real travel adventure. It was here in Durban that we decided it was about time for a good old-fashioned potluck dinner, a regular custom among Airstream caravanners. Each of us whipped up a particular specialty. We filled up on barbecued meats, casserole dishes, and homemade breads and cakes. Though we've barely been traveling for 2 weeks, we sat around the campfires and talked about our final destination with great enthusiasm, Cairo and the Great Pyramids of Giza. Several days later, we arrived in the little village of Mazangili, and more natives turned out to dance for us. Here is still another tribe in these white sheets. They're dancing to the music of what appears to be the forerunner of the marimba we know today. Neither the music nor the dance is written. It is taught to one generation by another. These dancers were among the favorites of our group. At first, we thought this fellow just got mad and had a temper tantrum right on the spot. But it's really a very strenuous dance, enjoyed only by the he-men of the tribe. Then came the shimmy dancers. I don't suppose they've ever heard the song, "I Wish That I Could Shimmy Like My Sister Kate," but it could make #1 on the African hit parade. Notice the funny assortment of caps on these fellows as they march out. Leaving Mazangili, we decided to stock up on provisions at the local supermarket. And this is it. These native girls sell peanuts, cassava, instant mealie mush, and ready-to-eat grasshoppers at bargain prices. We decided to stock up of some of the less exotic foods in hopes of finding a bigger market further along. The rings you see around these girls' necks are made of colored grasses and decorated with beads. These coils are quite thin on children. Then, as the girls mature, the rings are made larger and thicker. When a girl takes a husband, she keeps the rings around her neck and wears the blanket of a married woman, which serves as a wedding ring. We were fascinated by the interesting designs on the small wall which ran the length of the marketplace. We never saw another like this throughout the rest of our trip. We did some trading and picked up a few souvenirs before setting out for Kruger National Park. All stocked up now, we're rolling toward one of Africa's biggest game preserves. That's Lou, our volunteer wagon boss, making the necessary arrangements to get our caravan into the animal compound. You must be back at the visitors' compound no later than 6 each day, and you're locked up for the night. Don't get out of your car for any reason, and elephants have the right of way, we were told firmly. And suddenly, all the animals from all the African adventure stories we had ever read leaped out of the pages and came to life right before our very eyes. Not used to seeing anything on the road bigger than a deer back home, most of us froze at the wheel at the sight of our first elephant. Could this be the same cheetah who always carried Tarzan messages back to the villagers? And of course, monkeys like this were everywhere. The giraffe is an amazing animal. At first, they appear so gangling, and yet they are fast, lithe, and graceful. Of course, they're a long way from a cool drink of water. We met a whole family of hippos, Mama, Papa, Sister, and Bud, out sniffing for an afternoon snack. We made our camp right here in this forest for 8 wonderful days. Our airstreams are self-contained with everything we need, hot and cold water, heat lights, and refrigeration, so we can stay out in the middle of no place without any outside connections or hookups. Now we're headed for Rhodesia and the gargantuan Victoria Falls. We arrived at the Rhodesian border that evening. With all our necessary papers in order, it took us no time to get through. We had our dinner, sang some songs, then turned in early, hoping to get a fresh start in the morning. On the way toward Victoria Falls, we encountered the famous Zimbabwe ruins, the African Acropolis, site of an ancient civilization of the 12th century. Huge and silent, they seem to be guarding the secret of their origin from the curious outsiders. An unknown people built these mysterious buildings without the use of mortar, and yet they have defied the ravages of the past 900 years. And finally we arrived at Victoria Falls. Spectacular work of nature, crashing millions of gallons of water a minute in a perpetual thundering avalanche. There were rainbows everywhere. So unbelievably huge are the falls that our cameraman had to fly over them in order to get this view. They are over a mile wide and they drop 400 feet. The roaring falls create a constant mist that feels like rain, and those of us who thought to bring along raincoats kept dry. Each view of the falls is more breathtaking than the next. While at this moment you see but one rainbow, we often saw as many as 6 or 7 at a time. Camped for the night beside this fascinating cascade, our caravan slept peacefully to the plaintive sounds of the jungle, accompanied by the endless roar of the world's largest known waterfall. The next morning, we turned our caravan toward the Congo, the vital heart of the Dark Continent, and in many ways the least known region of Africa. We didn't know it at the moment, but we were leaving any form of paved road, the city conveniences, and civilization as we know it, far behind us. Mid-afternoon on September 12th, we arrived at the Congo frontier. We were amazed by the fact that almost upon crossing the border into the Congo, we could hear jungle drums beating incessantly in the distance. We discovered later that from here on out we would never be out of earshot of native drums and jungle chanting. Day and night, infectious rhythms pulsated in the jungle air. Listen. There's no turning back now. At the border, we learned that there was a Bantu settlement 40 or 50 miles in, headed by an English-speaking chief. We figured he could give us a lot of valuable information on road conditions through parts of the Congo, and we set out to find him. This road might look pretty rough to you, and it did to us too, but compared with the roads that we were to travel in the weeks ahead, it was one of the best. Now and then we'd pass a group of ramshackle huts like these. Along the way, we came across these native Congo women preparing the main staple of their diet. It's a form of cassava and rather versatile. The outer part is so poisonous, it's used on their spears and arrows. If scrubbed clean, however, it is safe to grind into mealy mush, a kind of meal that wouldn't exactly make a big hit on your breakfast table. We were offered some. Harry, our troubleshooter, who'll try anything, tasted it. But the rest of us figured we weren't too hungry. Jungle drums thumped out the message that our caravan was coming through, and we were met by delegations like this one in every village we came to. We traveled for several days through thick tropical foliage. At times the roads disappeared completely under the heavy jungle. and we were rather glad when we finally did come upon the Bantu settlement. The townspeople came out to meet our odd-looking lot. They don't get much company out this way, and it's understandable. They turned out to be quite friendly and hospitable. The fellow with the white seashells on his turban is the chief, a nice fellow who greeted us with jambo. It's a word like aloha. It means hello, goodbye, good luck, or anything else you please, and we heard it from one end of the Congo to the other. He introduced us to some of his subjects. They were interesting people, and as you probably noticed, look quite different from other South Africans. The chief did the interpreting, and they told us about their village life, and the chief was curious about the country we came from. It was getting late in the day, so we decided it was time to go. We thanked our host for his hospitality and prepared to leave. One wonderful thing about traveling in an airstream is that it gives you the opportunity to really communicate with the people you meet. Wherever we went, we seemed to make friends. We left a supply of candy for the kids, a few other gifts for the villagers, and shouted, "Jambo! Jambo!" Having gathered road information from the Bantu chief, we took off toward Watusi country, land of the giant people of Africa. Occasionally, we ran out of road altogether like this. This is the Luava River. No bridge, no ferry boat, no alternate roads. We made arrangements to cross on a homemade barge that you just wouldn't use unless you were desperate, and we were. We were so relieved when the whole affair didn't just sink to the bottom of the river, car, trailer, and all, that we didn't grumble too much when we learned it took almost 1 hour each way. It took courage, but we put 36 trailers on this Queen Mary, one at a time, and in 2 days we had everyone across. While we were waiting for the others to cross, some of us did a little hunting and fishing to restock our food supplies. There's the last one now. Check those planks carefully, fellas, or we'll all be headed back to Cape Town, downriver. On the other side came the biggest shock of all, Drum Mountain. So narrow there was room for only one car at a time. So treacherous, native drummers stationed along the way would have to beat out the all clear to the next curve. This took a couple of days too. Don't get your signals mixed up. It seemed to take forever, but we finally arrived in the land of the 7-foot Watusi, and it was really worth the hardships. They put on one ceremonial dance after another for us, each more fascinating than the last. Even Watusi children joined in the festivities. This old man is chasing away evil spirits. To the little children, he looks pretty evil himself. But it was all in fun, and when he came into our group to tease us, we teased right back. Brilliantly outfitted in full dress, this group of Watusi tribesmen put on a rigorous war dance that should have given all of them a slip disc. But it didn't seem to bother any of them. As we watched the Watusis, we felt we were really seeing Africa firsthand. We were thankful that we had made the decision to take the plunge, hitch up our airstreams, and join a Wally Byam caravan, in their perennial search for adventure. Even the kids on this caravan would bring back plenty of thrilling stories for the stay-at-homes we left behind. Looking as menacingly as he knew how, the local witch doctor decided to drive out more evil spirits. Another native, playing the part of evil, picked up his spear and shield and decided to have it out. Of course, good always wins over evil, but it looks like evil doesn't want to give up easily, and he was determined to make the witch doctor earn his victory. This was truly a once-in-a-lifetime trip, and along with these pictures that we're taking now, Wally set out to record the authentic chanting, drumming, and rhythmic clapping of a continent just awakening from the Dark Ages. Watusi country was a thrilling experience for all of us. We felt we had seen Africa. As we said goodbye to the Watusi chief, other tribesmen surrounded Wally's trailer and pretended to attack for our cameras. Now, don't forget, fellows, we're only pretending. We had heard about a small village on the shores of Lake Tanganyika where it was said a witch doctor could tell your fortune with amazing accuracy. It sounded like fun, so we found a guide, the Englishman there with a beard, who said he would lead the way, and we hiked about 4 miles into the backcountry. When we arrived, we found the witch doctor whipping up a little voodoo for the local folks. We told the witch doctor we were destined for Cairo and the great pyramids of Giza. Would we make it safely by Christmas? He rolled out the tiny bits of bone several times and studied them carefully. After a long silence came his reply. I see trouble on the great desert. I see a camel driver. He brings you a message. Who's the fellow with the deep-set eyes and the permanent smile? The witch doctor probably predicted an untimely end for him, and when he refused to pay, was obliged to make his predictions come true. Naturally, we don't believe in voodoo, but we couldn't help but wonder if his predictions about our caravan could possibly come true. While we thought it over, the witch doctor set out to show us how he eliminates an evil spirit. The weird music came from another wholesome-looking native who played progressive jazz on a curious-looking horn. The local people decided to make a party of it and brought out earthenware jars filled with their own native beer. Then young native girls joined in with a spirited dance. It was like something right out of an African adventure movie. It was an afternoon no caravaner would ever forget. We've traveled 6,000 miles, or half of our long journey to the fabled land of the Nile. We celebrated with songs and dances, then headed northwest to Pygmy country. And here they are, waving us on. We couldn't get over how reliable their drums were as a telegraph system. Just like in the African adventure movies we've all seen, we had the feeling we were constantly being watched by unseen warriors. And we were. We didn't make a move that they didn't know about. You can hear their drums now, telling the villagers that strangers are entering their forest. As soon as they heard the news, they came running from near and far to see the odd-looking people who pulled their homes behind them. As soon as we stopped, we were surrounded by the little people. Bursting out of the dense foliage which was teeming with pygmies, they swarmed in from all sides. We offered them candy, small trinkets, and other goodies, which they accepted with a smile. That's Eileen Halbritter, trying to barter for a native knife. Harry tried to help her, and soon the transaction turned into a game of charades. None had ever seen a balloon before in his life, and when Wally blew them up for them, they became as excited as little kids at a carnival. Oops, heads up, fellas. We found the pygmies to be among the friendliest of all African tribes we had met so far. They seem also to be the happiest people. They're quite intelligent and possess a keen sense of humor. They're full of clever tricks, and they love to play little jokes on you. This fellow is no taller than a 10-year-old boy, but he could easily be 40 or 50 years old. We asked if we could visit their village, and they led us deep into the forest, a rare opportunity indeed. While pygmies themselves may never get much over 4 feet tall, pygmy babies are born regulation size, 7 or 8 pounds. Their huts are made of thatched rushes and palm leaves. A little mud helps hold them together. Inside is a small fire pit. And pygmy housekeeping is a breeze. When the village becomes too dirty, they burn it down and build another one in another part of the forest. Here you see pygmies of all ages, young, middle-aged, and very old. It is very difficult, however, to tell a pygmy's age. They actually don't even know themselves, because apparently they keep no records of time. Well, that way at least you never grow old. Pygmy children are the same as kids anywhere else in the world. Show them a tree and they'll play Tarzan. This little fellow decided it was time for a lunch break and couldn't be bothered with us. Night all. These are the breadwinners. While there are some roots and berries that can be gathered and eaten, the main source of food is deer and other small animals. Pygmies must constantly hunt down their food, kill it, and bring it home to the family. Each day they go out in the forest and select the animal they prefer, sort of a self-service food plan. You might say dinner really depends on a sharp spear and the throwing arm of a National League pitcher. And pygmy homemakers don't need a zigzag sewing machine. They just pick up a broadleaf from a nearby shrub, pound it furiously for several hours. Here she's making her own red dye. Now a little finger painting to give it the flair of an original, and there you are, a new frock in the height of fashion. Pygmy fashion, that is. At first we thought this was just ring around the rosy pygmy style, but it's really a ceremonial ritual in which young maidens decorated in green foliage danced around the young men. Here is one of the most fascinating dances anyone has ever filmed in Africa. It's the monkey dance. We would throw out bits of candy and the dancers would pretend to retrieve them in monkey fashion. Notice how their actions and motions remarkably resemble that of real monkeys. Leaving the Ituri forest, we worked our way toward Uganda. The roads were becoming progressively worse. Flat tires were common, and we moved as slow as Sunday traffic back home. When we did get a glimpse of the countryside, it was beautiful, and wildlife was in abundance everywhere. See those zebras grazing lazily over there? Well, you're not the only one who sees them. This lioness has Sunday night supper for her family in mind. She waits for just the right moment. These vultures watch too. They're waiting for a free meal. And now it's all over. The lioness made the kill. The male lion shows up with the hungry cubs. When they have finished, the vultures come down and pick over the leftovers. That's the law of the jungle. As we reached more open country, we saw still more fascinating animal life, like this herd of wildebeests. The temperamental rhinoceros was a constant threat, and we often had to stop the caravan until the beast lost interest in us, and then continue on our way. But the hippos are a happy lot, and so enraptured in each other, weren't even aware of our presence. Oh, John. Oh, Marcia. Oh, John. This huge bull elephant with his treacherous tusks over 4 feet long seems annoyed that we have come tramping through his personal feeding ground. Elephants are quite nearsighted, but their sense of smell is remarkably acute. He knows we're here, and we're glad he's on the other side of the river. Out of the Congo now, the bad roads got worse, and as you can see, more impossible. A flat tire a mile was nothing, but our airstreams, thank heavens, rolled through uncomplainingly. See those odd-shaped rocks by the side of the road? Those are ant hills, crawling with millions of African ants. We must have passed 100, many of them over 30 feet high. Just going by them made you want to scratch. As we came into the Dust Bowl of Africa, we were down to the last of our valuable water. Water for drinking only, came the tart order from Wally Byam. For days that seemed like an eternity, we bounced and jounced through the yellow clouds of thick, gritty dust. Our nostrils were sore and our throats raw from swallowing what we felt was half of Africa. For 2 more days, we waded through the awful stuff. Suddenly, we heard somebody shout, "Water! There's water ahead!" The word spread from airstream to airstream. And there it was. Not a mirage, but real water. Wet, cool, and delicious. We lost no time in jumping in. We filled all the tanks in our airstreams. One of the caravanners even volunteered to give haircuts. Instantly there was a lineup, and for the first time in days, we felt really clean. Then Wally called for meeting time. He was telling us that the Dust Bowl was a Sunday picnic compared to what lay ahead for us. Are we going to make it to the pyramids by Christmas, he asked. That's all the answer Wally needed. He knew we were with him all the way. The next afternoon, we pointed our happy caravan toward Ethiopia.
From Capetown to Cairo, they all said it can't be done. Lead on, Wally Byam, we'll be the first and only ones. We're gay caravanners, making travel dreams come true. With their streams together, we know that we'll get through. Through jungle brush we'll sing our song
Wally warned us to be on the lookout for fierce nomadic tribes that terrorize the desert. As we came near the frontier, we were suddenly surrounded by armed guards. What a relief, and what a surprise. It was a royal escort sent by Emperor Haile Selassie to see us safely through his kingdom to Addis Ababa. This is Mussolini Bridge, built during the war and never used again. By the looks of it, we weren't sure it could support the weight of a car and trailer. Slowly, one at a time, we managed to get across. When we got to the other side, we discovered there was no road, so we set out to build one. All together, we pulled out rocks, filled in holes, and chopped back the invading jungle. We were amazed at how much we could accomplish when the whole caravan put muscle and brains together. And Wally knew the fastest way to get a trailer out of a rut. He would get on his bullhorn and shout, "Man power, kid power." And his call was answered. Men, women, and kids too got behind the line. One by one, we got each trailer through. Apparently, there was nothing we couldn't accomplish with this kind of cooperation. This little stretch of ruts and chuck holes is now known as Byam Boulevard. But even this washboard road didn't last very long. The bad roads in the Congo had put us way behind schedule, and now the rains that we figured on avoiding were turning the trails into a sloshy mire. Normally, a caravan can make about 150 miles a day. In these conditions, we were doing somewhere between 4 and 6 miles a day, and we considered that good. 4 flat tires on one car and trailer was nothing unusual. And we formed volunteer crews that did nothing but run up and down the line patching tires. The going was tough, and we strained every muscle we owned. But wasn't this adventure? Wasn't this the experience of Admiral Byrd and Dr. Livingston? And of all who dared to explore a new land? Wasn't this an example of our own American pioneer spirit? And when the kids on this trip return to school, won't they know something of the world they live in and will guide tomorrow? Yes, a caravan is more than simply traveling. It's learning. It's more than just looking. It's doing. Don't look for a service station around here. It's going to take muscle power and caravan spirit to get us through this. We worked like this all day, fell exhausted into our beds at night, then started early again the next morning. We're thankful for our comfortable beds, a cool shower, and a home-cooked meal. Well, we made it. Our bones creaked and our muscles ached. There wasn't one of us who didn't have a sore back. But one by one, we got them all through. This last stretch was so bad, we swore that if we ever saw a decent road again, we would kneel down and kiss it. And boy, did it look good. This was the best road we'd seen in weeks, and it felt like Route 66, and we sang all the way to Addis Ababa. As we triumphantly entered the ancient capital of Ethiopia, a royal messenger announced to Wally that Haile Selassie commanded our appearance at the palace. None of us had ever met a real emperor before, and we waited for tomorrow like a kid waits for Christmas morning. Arriving at the palace in our Sunday best, we were thrilled to see the proverbial red carpet rolled out for the Wally Byam caravan. We could hardly wait to get a glimpse of our royal host. And there he is, the Lion of Judah, His Royal Highness, the Emperor of Ethiopia. He greeted each of us personally. The whole affair was right out of a fairy tale. His Majesty's pet lions have the run of the place. The guest list included ambassadors, high government officials, and other dignitaries you read about in your newspaper, but rarely have the opportunity to meet. Surrounded by royal splendor and standing amid the glitter of gold and ivory columns, we felt like the lords and ladies of storybook fame. One of the highlights of the reception was when Wally Byam named U.S. Ambassador Bliss an honorary caravaner. Then someone decided that one of the court lions should also wear the Wally Byam beret. The lion appeared dubious of the honor, but decided to go through with it and be a royal sport about the whole thing. "Lead me to my airstream," he growled. The next day found our caravan welcoming a distinguished visitor. The Emperor had accepted our invitation to inspect our airstreams. We tried pinching ourselves, but we weren't dreaming. We had actually been the guests of the Emperor yesterday, and today he is our guest. He was amazed with the amount of luxuries and comforts that we traveled with. He insisted on seeing every airstream in the caravan. A trip like this couldn't be possible any other way, he seemed to say to himself. Haile Selassie is a direct descendant of the Queen of Sheba. He is a strong and powerful ruler, but we found him a kind, soft-spoken gentleman who talked of his grandchildren like any fond grandfather. It was an unforgettable experience for all of us. We expressed our thanks for his generosity, then said goodbye to our new friend, the Lion of Judah, His Royal Highness, the Emperor of Ethiopia. We leave Addis Ababa and head for the ancient city of Eritrea. As our caravan coiled its way through the mountainous terrain, we encountered more of these drifters who live in no particular village, but like the shifting sands of the timeless desert they live in, they drift from place to place. This is famous Mussolini Pass, unquestionably the most tortuous, precarious, ridiculous, and impossible road in the world. If it looks as if we're climbing straight up, you're right, we are. Because of the streamlined design, an airstream tows very easily, light as a feather and true as an arrow. And while it was pretty scary, you can see we had no problem getting up. I will say I would never want to make a trip like this in anything but an airstream. Arriving in the old city of Eritrea, we got an unexpected treat. Wally appealed to the chief to let us see the famous treasure of crown jewels. And there they are, heavy crowns of pure gold encrusted with brilliant rubies, priceless emeralds, and a fortune in diamonds. These crowns date back to the Queen of Sheba and the other monarchs who were making history while the rest of the world was fighting a thing called Christianity. Tonight is Christmas Eve, and we've barely reached the northern Ethiopia desert. It was plain to see we wouldn't be parked beside the Great Pyramid of Giza by Christmas. The next morning we would head out for the Sudan, and we sang Christmas carols till dawn. Now the American military police would be our escort, and they would see us safely to the Sudanese border. Just one more country to cross, and we would be in Egypt. Then on to Cairo, where we would form a ring of airstreams between the great pyramids of Giza. We were closer than ever now, and yet somehow it seemed so far away. We drove for what seemed forever in a desert that seemed endless. Several days later, we met up with another kind of caravan. It was a huge caravan of about 40 or 50 camels. Camel caravans serve as a railroad, and they've been traveling the same route for 2,000 years. It was a caravan like this one that brought the treasures of conquest to the Queen of Sheba. We stopped to rest ourselves, asked directions, and bartered for a few souvenirs. This fellow is the desert mailman and carries messages in these small containers. We suddenly wondered if this could be the camel driver the witch doctor back in Tanganyika told us would bring us a message. It obviously wasn't, and we all had a good laugh on the witch doctor. After a short rest period, the camels were led to a water hole, and each loaded up with 30 gallons or more. A 10-day supply. Oh, how we wished we could do that. A brief friendship on the desert, and now the two caravans part. Each to his own destiny must go. They to the next oasis, to no place and back. And we on to Cairo and the pyramids of Giza. The camel drivers had told us that here in this desolate wasteland, all roads lead to the same place and you couldn't get lost. We considered this a 40-lane freeway and rolled off toward the Sudan. We found the Sudanese flag waving a welcome in a brisk breeze under the brilliant desert sun. And here we are in Khartoum, a beautiful oasis in the middle of the Sudanese desert. It looked green, it looked wonderful to us, and when the villagers invited us to a feast, we accepted in a hurry. They brought out enticing cuts of meat roasted over an open fire, fresh salads and exotic refreshments to quench the thirst of a weary traveler. And we ate as if there were no tomorrow. We all agreed that only in an airstream can you travel beyond the tourist high spots and get right to the people who make a nation tick. The next day, Wally called for meeting time once again, this time to discuss the most hazardous portion of our whole trip, the crossing of the Nubian desert. We had two choices, to go by freight train or try driving it as a crow flies. The Nubian desert is a raging inferno of vagrant sand dunes exiled from the rest of the world. No roads, no communications, just trackless sands and homeless winds without mercy. Some of the caravanners decided to load their cars and trailers on these flat cars and ride in with them. Another group of bold caravanners implored Wally to let them conquer the desert. Wally, who has led caravans in all parts of the world, agreed, only if the scout car and trouble truck would volunteer to go along. They did agree, and the issue was settled. It was decided we would all meet at the Egyptian frontier on the banks of the Nile. It took the better part of a day to get all the cars and trailers tied down for the jostling train ride, and by mid-afternoon, we put the last one on. Already, the big, powerful train that could slide across the desert on dependable steel rails was beginning to look good. Sure you won't come along, they asked. Sheer pride kept us from accepting. We watched them pull out. It was too late to change our minds now. See you in Egypt, they shouted. Tell the Sphinx we'll be right up, we yelled back bravely. And we waved until they were lost from sight. Then we started out ourselves. But the desert can be cruel, and it was. We weren't out an hour, but it hit us with sand and wind and impossible drifts that would strangle our wheels to a stop. We tried scraps of plywood under the wheels to try to get traction. Whatever we tried, it seemed the vengeful desert would fight back with more sand and a brutal wind that would scorch our faces. We shoveled sand until we were sure our backs were broken. We pushed and pulled until we thought our arms were about to fall off. The desert seemed determined to prove its strength, and as fast as we could get one trailer out, another would sink in. If we had anything at all to be thankful for, it was a good supply of food and water, and the comforts carried inside our Airstreams. With the help of some natives we picked up along the way, we tried throwing more wire fencing under the wheels. We moved about 8 feet, then repeated the operation. It was slow and it was risky. We traveled like this for what seemed an eternal nightmare. And at long last, we picked up the railroad tracks again and followed them in. In the meantime, the rest of the caravan waited and worried on the banks of the Nile. How long should they wait? Should they send a search party? At that moment, a camel driver arrived. Your caravan is safely on its way, he told Wally. The prophecy of the witch doctor had come to pass. The crowds gathered on the road and cheered as we pulled in, tired, dirty, and so glad just to be alive. Reunited once again, we decided to explore a group of smaller pyramids not far away. We've all read about the ancient pharaohs and how they were entombed with their wives and servants for a happy life in the hereafter. But to actually walk beside them was like walking through the pages of our high school history book. Egyptians were among the world's first artists and great thinkers. Today, puzzled archaeologists still study their hieroglyphs in hopes of piecing together the story of a powerful empire that suddenly fell out of existence. At this point, it was necessary to put our Airstreams on barges once more, this time to cross the Nile and begin the last leg of our memorable journey. These barges were a far cry from the makeshift floats we used to cross the Luava River, so we weren't worried in the least about getting across. Hey, we never saw this in our Boy Scout handbook. It had been over 6 months now, and for the first time we felt our goal was really in sight. the crossing was going to take most of the day, and we were just as glad. This particular area in Egypt is rich in Egyptian art, and we welcomed the opportunity to see things leisurely. The natives had never seen such a strange caravan and became quite friendly with us while we were waiting to load on the barges. We pushed off, and they would all run out to the banks and wave their arms in a vigorous farewell. Some of us decided we'd cross on sailboats. Harry Halbritter, that's him in the red shirt, decided to join the crew in a bite of lunch. Well, this way at least you don't have to offer to help with the dishes. We're headed for the ancient temple of Abu Simbel. Huge and magnificent, the great temple is carved out from the side of a mountain. The stone pharaohs are as tall as an office building and measure 13 feet from ear to ear. Take a good look at it because you may never see it again. Soon it will be lying at the bottom of a deep lake created by the new Aswan Dam. On this side of the Nile, the remnants of ancient Egypt are everywhere. The Egyptians left the world a legacy of art that retells the magnificence of its culture, the genius of its thought, and the power of its empire. A perfect example of Egyptian splendor are these ancient ruins at Karnak. That's Arturo Ruiz and Tony Grabowski. They first met on this caravan, fell in love, and are now happily married. This is the temple of Queen Hatshepsut, the first feminine pharaoh of Egypt. The entire structure was carved right out of the living rock in 1480 BC. The colossi of Amenhotep III look silently out across the Nile with imperishable eyes, as they have since 1398 BC, when the powerful king ordered them carved from a solid rock 52 feet high. It is now February 7th, 1960. We are nearing the Great Pyramid, and we know our dream is about to come true. Our impossible journey is almost over, and yet the experiences of the past several months pass before us. And now, here we are, 7 months and 12,000 miles later, gathered around the Great Pyramid of Giza. Together we've shared in the fun, friendship, and adventure of a Wally Byam caravan. We've learned a great deal from this experience. Back home, a man over 60 is a senior citizen, and they think he's ready for pasture. On a caravan, he's as strong and independent as a bull elephant. Children seem more eager to learn about the world around them. The teenagers came away with a better understanding, a new respect for adults. Yes, we're all a great deal richer in a very special sense. We're leaving our tears and our sweat on the parched sands of Ethiopia, our laughter ringing in the Congo, and our tire marks for others to follow, from Cape Town to Cairo. Because the impossible takes a little longer, we arrived in Cairo a little late. Wally Byam.